The words cut through me like a knife through warm butter, leaving me hollow and bleeding inside. "You ruined my childhood," my daughter Olivia spat, her eyes burning with 27 years of built-up resentment. Her voice trembled, but not with sadness, with pure, undiluted hatred. I stood frozen in my suburban Connecticut kitchen, the same kitchen where I'd packed thousands of school lunches and kissed countless scraped knees. The same kitchen where I'd cried myself to sleep at the table after Robert left us. Left me. "You're pathetic," Olivia continued, her manicured finger pointing at my chest. "You drove Dad away, and then you made us believe he abandoned us. All those years of your poor me act, your victim complex, your martyrdom. God, I can't believe I actually felt sorry for you." Her words landed like physical blows. I gripped the edge of the counter behind me, feeling the cool granite against my fingertips, anchoring me to reality. The afternoon light filtered through the windows, casting golden rectangles on the hardwood floor. The same floor Robert had installed the summer before he disappeared from our lives. "Olivia, please," I whispered, but the words came out broken, fractured things. "You don't understand." "I understand perfectly," she interrupted, her voice rising. "Uncle Dave told me everything last night. How you cheated on Dad. How you threatened to take us away if he didn't leave quietly. How you made him promise never to contact us. You isolated us from the entire family. 23 years, Mom. 23 years of lies." The mention of Dave, Robert's brother, sent ice through my veins. Dave, who had always hated me. Dave, who had never forgiven me for marrying his brother in the first place. Dave, who had spent decades poisoning everyone against me. "Olivia," I tried again, my voice steadier now. "What exactly did Dave tell you?" "Everything," she hissed, tears streaming down her face now. "And I believe him. It all makes sense now. The way you controlled everything. The way you never let us ask about Dad. The way you made us feel guilty for even missing him." I felt something crumble inside me. All those years of sacrifice, of working 2 jobs, of crying silently in the shower so the girls wouldn't hear me. All those years of protecting them from the truth. And now, in an instant, it was all being rewritten. "I have something to show you," I said quietly, my heart pounding so hard I could hear the blood rushing in my ears. "I don't want to see any more of your lies," Olivia snapped, but she didn't move to leave. I walked slowly to the small secretary desk in the corner of the living room. My hands shook as I turned the tiny key in the lock of the bottom drawer, a drawer I hadn't opened in over 2 decades. The hinges creaked in protest. Inside, wrapped in acid-free tissue paper, lay a cream-colored envelope. The paper had yellowed slightly with age, but the handwriting on the front remained clear. "For my daughters, when they're ready to understand." Robert's handwriting, unmistakable, elegant but masculine. I'd traced those letters with my fingertips countless times over the years, wondering if I was doing the right thing by keeping it hidden. "What is that?" Olivia asked, her voice smaller now, uncertainty creeping in. "The letter your father wrote before he died," I said, the words catching in my throat. "The letter I've kept for 23 years, waiting for the right time." Olivia's face went slack with shock. "Died? What are you talking about? Uncle Dave said Dad's been living in Arizona all this time." I shook my head slowly, extending the envelope toward my daughter. "Your father has been dead for 23 years, Olivia, and everything you think you know about why he left us is wrong." Her hand trembled as she reached for the envelope, her eyes never leaving my face, searching for deception, finding none. "Read it," I said softly. "Read what your father wanted you to know when you were old enough to understand." As Olivia broke the seal on the envelope, I felt 23 years of carefully constructed protection beginning to crumble. The truth, after all this time, was finally going to be free, and nothing would ever be the same again. My name is Eleanor Mitchell, Ellie to the few friends I have left. I'm 57 years old, though most days my body feels much older. I live in Glastonbury, Connecticut, in the same 4-bedroom colonial where Robert and I raised our daughters, or at least started to, before everything fell apart, before the diagnosis, before the secrets, before the promise that would shape the rest of our lives. I still work at Hartford Memorial Hospital as a nursing administrator, though I've cut back to part-time since the arthritis in my hands has gotten worse. 28 years in nursing, watching other people's tragedies unfold daily, sometimes helps put my own pain in perspective. Sometimes it doesn't, The house is too big for just me now. Olivia lives in Boston with her husband Mark, working as an attorney. My younger daughter, Sophie, teaches 3rd grade in Providence. They visit on major holidays, though those visits have grown increasingly strained over the years. The distance between us isn't just geographical. It's the weight of the things unsaid, the secrets kept, the truths hidden. I've told myself 1,000 times that I did the right thing, that protecting my girls from the awful truth was an act of love, not deception. But on nights when I can't sleep, and there are many, I wonder if I've been protecting them or myself all these years. The morning of Olivia's unexpected visit had started like any other. I woke at 5:30, made coffee, took my medications, the little army of pills that keeps my body functioning. I watered the houseplants that line my kitchen window, descendants of the ones Robert had brought home when we first moved in. Every home needs living things, he'd said with that smile that still haunts my dreams. I'd gone to my water aerobics class for my arthritis, chatted with the other pool ladies as we call ourselves, all of us with our own burdens, our own stories, floating in the heated water like secrets waiting to surface. I hadn't expected Olivia. She never comes unannounced. That should have been my first warning that something was wrong. When I pulled into the driveway and saw her silver Audi parked there, my heart had leapt with momentary joy, then immediately constricted with fear. Mothers know. We always know when something is wrong. She was sitting on the porch steps, sunglasses hiding her eyes, her dark hair, so like Robert's, pulled back in a severe ponytail. She didn't stand when I approached, didn't smile, didn't reach for the hug that had become our awkward greeting ritual on her infrequent visits. "Dave called me last night," she'd said without preamble. "He was drunk, said he couldn't live with the lie anymore." And just like that, I knew my carefully constructed world was about to implode. Dave, Robert's younger brother, the irresponsible one, the one who'd resented me from the moment Robert brought me home to meet the family. "She's too plain for you," I'd overheard him saying once. "Too serious. She'll suck all the fun out of your life." Robert had defended me, of course, said Dave just didn't understand what real love looked like. But the seed of dislike had been planted, and over the years, it had grown into a twisted tree of hatred. After Robert was gone, Dave had tried once to console me, arriving at my door late at night with alcohol on his breath and something predatory in his eyes. When I'd turned him away, the hatred had calcified. He'd spread rumors within the family, turned Robert's parents against me. And now, apparently, he'd finally gotten to my daughter as well. I'd known this day might come, had prepared for it, in a way, by keeping Robert's letter. But I'd hoped, foolishly perhaps, that I would have some control over when and how the truth came out, that I could find the right words to soften the blow, that I could help my daughters understand why I'd made the choices I had. But life rarely gives us the luxury of perfect timing or perfect words. As Olivia opened her father's letter in my kitchen, I found myself staring at her hands. They were Robert's hands, long-fingered, elegant, with prominent veins that mapped the surface like rivers. Her expressions, too, were his. The slight furrow between her brows as she concentrated, the way her lips pressed together when she was processing something difficult. I remember holding her the day she was born, marveling at this perfect blend of Robert and myself. "She's going to be a heartbreaker," he'd whispered, cradling her tiny form with his large, gentle hands. Just like her mother. He'd kissed my forehead then, both of us exhausted but deliriously happy. We had no idea what lay ahead. How could we? Nobody expects their perfect life to shatter. Nobody plans for the unimaginable. The sound of paper unfolding brought me back to the present. Olivia's hands shook slightly as she carefully extracted the letter from its envelope. 3 pages of Robert's distinctive handwriting, the last words he'd written to his daughters. Words I'd memorized over the years, having read them so many times myself, searching for comfort, for absolution, for some sign that I'd made the right choice. I watched my daughter's face as she began to read, her expression shifting from anger to confusion, her body tense with anticipation. I wanted to reach out, to put my hand on her shoulder, to offer comfort for what I knew she was about to learn. But I stayed where I was, giving her the space to absorb her father's words, to begin the journey toward understanding, and perhaps, someday, forgiveness. "My dearest Olivia and Sophie," the letter began. I could see Robert's voice forming in Olivia's mind as she read, his warm baritone that used to fill our home with laughter and song. Olivia's eyes darted across the page, widening with each line. I knew what she was reading. Words I'd memorized. Words that had both sustained me and tortured me for 23 years. By the time you read this, I will have been gone a long time. Your mother has promised to give you this letter when you're old enough to understand the choices adults sometimes have to make. Choices that break our hearts, but that we make out of love. Olivia looked up sharply. "What is this?" she demanded, but her voice had lost its edge. Confusion had replaced anger. She continued reading, her knuckles white against the yellowed paper. "The doctors have given me 6 months, maybe a year with aggressive treatment. The tumor is inoperable, growing, hungry. It will take everything from me, my dignity, my mind, my ability to be the father you deserve." "No," Olivia whispered, sinking into a chair. "No, this isn't," Dave said. I remained silent. Let Robert's words do what mine could not. "I've made a decision that your mother disagrees with, but that I believe is best. I don't want you to watch me disappear piece by piece. I don't want your childhood memories to be of hospitals and sickness and fear. I want you to remember me strong, whole. The father who taught you to ride bikes and who sang off key at bedtime." Tears were streaming down Olivia's face now. She looked up at me, bewildered, lost. "Dad had cancer? Brain cancer? Why didn't you tell us? Why did everyone think he just left?" The question I'd been dreading for 23 years. The question I'd rehearsed answering countless times in the dark of night. "Because that's what he wanted," I said quietly. "And because that's what Dave and your grandparents decided to tell everyone after he was gone." Olivia shook her head, disbelieving. "That makes no sense. Why would they lie?" "Keep reading," I said gently. "Robert explains it better than I can." She turned back to the letter, her hands trembling more violently now. "I've asked your mother to tell you I've left, gone away. It seems cruel, I know, but the alternative is crueler. Better you think I'm alive somewhere than watch me die slowly before your eyes. Better you have a father who chose to leave than one who was taken. Your mother disagreed, fought me on it, but I've made her promise. My last wish." Olivia made a small wounded sound, like a trapped animal. "He made you tell us he abandoned us? As a kindness?" I nodded, unable to speak past the knot in my throat. "But why would Dave lie? Why would he tell me you drove Dad away? That you cheated? That you threatened Dad?" The betrayal that had haunted me for decades. The knife that had twisted in my heart every time the girls asked about their father. Every time I had to perpetuate Robert's final wish. "Because Dave couldn't accept Robert's choice," I said finally. "He was angry. At the cancer. At God. At me. He blamed me for agreeing to Robert's plan. Said I was robbing them of their goodbye. When Robert died, Dave told your grandparents that I had forced Robert to cut ties with everyone. That I was controlling and manipulative. They believed him. But why didn't you fight back? Tell the truth?" "Because I promised your father," I said simply. "And because part of me thought maybe they were right. That maybe I should have fought harder against Robert's plan." Olivia turned back to the letter, her fingers tracing her father's handwriting as if trying to feel him through the paper. "Your mother is the strongest, most loving person I've ever known. What I'm asking her to do is unfair, cruel even. To bear not only the burden of raising you alone, but to bear your anger and confusion as well. To become the villain in her own story. I know the cost, but I also know she loves you enough to pay it." Olivia looked up at me, really seeing me for perhaps the first time in years. "You let us hate you," she whispered. "You let me blame you. All those years." I swallowed hard. "I let you have what your father wanted you to have. A childhood without the shadow of death hanging over it. Without the trauma of watching him deteriorate. He wanted you to remember him whole and strong." But we barely remember him at all," Olivia cried, anger flaring again. "You took all the photos down. You never talked about him." The accusation hit me like a physical blow. "I kept every photo," I said quietly. "Every video. Every card he ever gave me. They're in the attic. I couldn't look at them every day and keep the promise I made him. It hurt too much. But I never threw anything away. I was saving it all for when you were ready for the truth." "The truth," Olivia repeated bitterly. "Which is that our entire family lied to us our whole lives. Your father thought he was protecting you," I said. "Dave and your grandparents thought they were protecting Robert's memory. And I was just trying to honor the last wish of the man I loved more than my own life." "At what cost, Mom? At what cost to you? To us?" Olivia stood suddenly, pacing the kitchen. Do you have any idea what it did to me? Growing up thinking my father didn't want me? That he chose to leave and never look back? Do you know how that shaped me? How it broke me? Each question was a dagger. Of course I knew. I'd watched it happen. Had lain awake countless nights wondering if Robert had been wrong. If I had been wrong to keep my promise. I thought I was doing what was best, I said, my voice breaking. What he wanted. And what about what we needed? Olivia demanded, tears flowing freely now. What about the truth? What about all those years I spent hating you for something you didn't do? The truth of her words washed over me. The magnitude of what Robert's choice had cost us all. The years of alienation. The damaged relationships. The pain that could have perhaps been avoided. I'm sorry, I whispered, the words wholly inadequate for the weight they needed to carry. Olivia turned away, clutching her father's letter to her chest. I need to process this. I need time. As she walked toward the door, I didn't try to stop her. This was just the beginning of a long, painful reckoning. 23 years of carefully constructed reality was crumbling around us. The truth was finally free, and we were all going to have to learn to live with it. After Olivia left, I sat alone in the growing darkness of my kitchen, memories flooding back like water through a broken dam. The life we'd had before the diagnosis, the family we'd been, the love that had filled our home before it was replaced by secrets and silence. I met Robert Mitchell during my first year of nursing school. He was in the ER with a sprained wrist, a basketball injury, and I was the student nurse assigned to him. He had the most genuine smile I'd ever seen, and he used it shamelessly to get me to give him my phone number. For medical follow-up, he'd insisted with a wink that made my heart flutter despite my professional demeanor. Our courtship was a whirlwind. 6 months after that ER visit, we were engaged. 6 months after that, married in a small ceremony that his brother Dave nearly ruined by giving a drunken, inappropriate toast. Robert had apologized profusely, but I didn't care. Nothing could dim the light of that day. The way Robert looked at me as I walked down the aisle, like I was the answer to a question he'd been asking his whole life. We bought the house in Glastonbury with money Robert had inherited from his grandmother. It needed work. So much work. But we spent weekends painting and repairing, turning it from a neglected property into a home. Robert installed bookshelves in what would become our library, built a treehouse in the backyard for the children we dreamed of having. Olivia came along 3 years into our marriage, a colicky baby who screamed for hours, tested our patience, our love, our sanity. I remember one night, pacing the hallway at 3 a.m., Olivia wailing in my arms, my body aching with exhaustion. Robert appeared, took the baby from me, and sent me to bed. I've got this shift, he said simply. When I woke 3 hours later, I found them both asleep in the rocking chair, Olivia peaceful against his chest, his hand protectively cradling her tiny head. Sophie arrived 2 years later, an easier baby, smiling early, sleeping through the night by 8 weeks. Our family felt complete. Robert coached Little League, built science fair projects, read bedtime stories with different voices for each character. I worked part-time at the hospital, cherishing the balance we'd struck between work and family life. The first headache came on a Tuesday. I remember because we had tickets to see a play that night, and Robert almost canceled. Just a tension headache, he'd said, popping a couple of aspirin. I've been staring at spreadsheets all day. He was an accountant, methodical, precise, reliable, but the headaches continued, grew worse. When he started having trouble finding words, I insisted on the doctor's appointment he'd been putting off, the CT scan, the MRI, the devastating diagnosis, glioblastoma multiforme, the most aggressive form of brain cancer, inoperable due to its location. 18 months, the doctor had said gently, maybe less. Robert had sat perfectly still in the vinyl hospital chair, his face unreadable. I was the one who broke, who sobbed, who demanded second opinions, alternative treatments, miracles. Robert just reached for my hand and held it, his grip firm despite the tremor that had recently developed. 18 months, he repeated later that night, after we'd put the girls to bed. Olivia was 6, Sophie, 4, too young to understand, too young to lose their father. I don't want them to watch me die, Ellie. What are you talking about? I'd asked, confused. Of course we'll tell them. We'll prepare them. There are books, support groups. No, he cut me off, his voice surprisingly firm. I won't do that to them. I won't make them watch me deteriorate. become less than their dad. I won't have their childhood memories be of hospitals and sickness and grief. That was the beginning of the plan that would eventually tear our family apart. Robert's plan, Robert's choice, Robert's final act of what he believed was protection and love. He refused to tell the girls about his diagnosis, refused to tell his parents, his friends, his co-workers. Only Dave knew, and that was only because he'd walked in during one of Robert's seizures. Dave had been horrified by Robert's decision to keep the cancer secret, to create an alternate narrative for his eventual absence. "You want your daughters to think you abandoned them?" Dave had shouted during one particularly heated argument. "Are you insane? You want them to hate you rather than mourn you?" "I want them to live without the shadow of my death hanging over them," Robert had replied calmly. "I want them to be kids, not caregivers. I want them to remember me as their dad, not as a disease that took everything from me piece by piece." As the cancer progressed, as treatment failed, as Robert began to change physically and mentally, his resolve only strengthened. He made me promise, extracted from me a vow that I would tell the girls he had left us, gone away, a clean break rather than a long, painful decline. "You're asking me to lie to our children," I'd said, horrified, "to let them believe something that will hurt them in a different way." "I'm asking you to give them childhood without the trauma of watching me die," he replied. "I'm asking you to be strong enough to carry this burden for all of us." I fought him on it for weeks. Brought in therapists, counselors, specialists in childhood grief. They all advised honesty, age-appropriate explanations, support. Robert listened politely and dismissed them all. "My choice," he said firmly. "My death. My terms." In the end, I gave in. Not because I believed he was right, but because I couldn't bear to spend our final months together fighting. Because I loved him too much to deny him this last request, misguided as I believed it was. The last 3 months moved with terrible swiftness. Robert deteriorated rapidly, the tumor growing, pressing, destroying. We told the girls Daddy was going on a work trip, then that the trip was extended, then finally, that Daddy had decided to live somewhere else, but that he loved them very much. Olivia, at 6, was old enough to be confused, to ask questions I couldn't answer honestly. Sophie, at 4, simply accepted that Daddy was gone, adapting with the resilience of the very young. Both cried. Both asked when he was coming back. Both eventually stopped asking. Robert died in a hospice facility, with only me and Dave at his bedside. His parents had been told he was on a spiritual retreat, seeking treatment for depression. They never knew how sick he really was until after he was gone. The day after the private cremation service, Dave came to the house, his eyes red from crying and drinking. "I won't lie for him," he said flatly. "I won't perpetuate this fiction." "You promised him," I reminded Dave, my own grief still too fresh, too raw to process his betrayal. "I promised a dying man something impossible," he spat. He wasn't thinking clearly. "The tumor. Don't you dare," I interrupted, my voice low and dangerous. "Don't you dare suggest he didn't know his own mind." Dave's face hardened. "My parents deserve to know their son died. His daughters deserve to know their father didn't abandon them. And they will," I said, "when they're older, when they can understand." That's what Robert wanted. But Dave had his own ideas. Within weeks, he had told Robert's parents that I had driven their son away, that I had threatened Robert with taking the girls if he didn't leave quietly, that I had isolated the family deliberately. The story grew, evolved, gained details with each retelling. Robert's parents, grief-stricken and looking for someone to blame, believed Dave. They cut me off, cut the girls off, refused to acknowledge us at family functions on the rare occasions our paths crossed. I let them go, too exhausted from single parenthood and my own grief to fight back, too committed to my promise to Robert to tell them the truth. And so the years passed. The girls grew, the lie calcified into accepted family history, and I became the villain in a story I had never wanted to tell. The sound of my front door opening jolted me from my memories. I looked up, expecting to see Olivia returning. But it was Sophie who stood in the doorway, my youngest, my sensitive one. Her eyes were red-rimmed and swollen, her normally neat appearance disheveled. "Is it true?" she demanded without preamble. "Olivia called me. She said Dad. She said he..." Her voice broke, unable to complete the sentence. "Sophie," I whispered, rising from the kitchen chair where I'd been lost in the past. I didn't expect you. Is it true? She enunciated each word carefully, as if speaking to one of her third-grade students. Did Dad have cancer? Did he die 23 years ago? Have you been lying to us our entire lives? I nodded slowly, my heart breaking all over again at the pain etched across my youngest daughter's face. Olivia told me bits and pieces, Sophie continued, her voice rising. She was too upset to make much sense. Something about a letter? About Dad making you promise to lie? About Uncle Dave spreading rumors? Let me explain, I began, but Sophie cut me off with a sharp laugh. Explain? Now? After 23 years of lies? She moved further into the kitchen, her body vibrating with anger. Do you have any idea what it's like to find out your entire childhood was built on a lie? That the mother you trusted, the only parent you had, was deceiving you every single day? I was honoring your father's wishes, I said, the defense sounding hollow even to my own ears. His wishes, Sophie repeated, her tone bitter. And what about our needs, Mom? What about our right to know our own history? Our own father? She slammed her purse down on the counter. You know what the worst part is? I don't even remember him. Not really. Just fragments. The smell of his aftershave. The sound of his laugh. But I can't picture his face without looking at photos. I can't remember what his voice sounded like. You took that from me. You and Dad and this messed up decision you made for us. Each word was a blow, landing precisely where I was most vulnerable, because she was right. In trying to protect them from one kind of pain, we had inflicted another, perhaps a worse one. Where's this letter? Sophie demanded. I want to read it myself. I gestured toward the envelope on the table where Olivia had left it. Sophie snatched it up, pulling out the pages with none of her sister's reverence. Her eyes scanned the words rapidly, her expression shifting from anger to confusion, to a grief so profound it made her look suddenly young and lost. He thought he was protecting us, she whispered, looking up from the letter. He actually thought this was better. I nodded, unable to speak past the knot in my throat, and you went along with it. This wasn't a question. You let us believe he abandoned us. You let us grow up without a father, without his family. I made a promise to a dying man, I said quietly. The man I loved more than anything in this world except for you and your sister. Was it the right choice? I don't know. I've asked myself that question every day for 23 years. Sophie dropped the letter onto the table as if it had burned her. And all those times I asked about him, when I cried because the other kids had dads and I didn't, when I wrote him letters that always came back, when I begged you to help me find him. That was all, what? An act? The memories she evoked sent pain shooting through me. The nights I'd held her while she cried for the father she believed had abandoned her. The father who had loved her so completely that he thought his deception was a gift. It was the hardest thing I've ever done, I admitted. Letting you believe something that caused you pain, watching you hurt, and not being able to tell you the truth. But I believed, your father believed, that the alternative would hurt you more. That wasn't your choice to make, Sophie exploded, tears streaming down her face now. That wasn't his choice either. We deserved the truth. We deserved to say goodbye. You were 4 years old, I said softly. Olivia was 6. Your father was dying by inches, losing his ability to speak, to walk, to recognize us. The man you would have said goodbye to wasn't the father you knew. Cancer took him long before death did. So instead we got nothing, Sophie said bitterly. No goodbye, no closure, no understanding. Just a lifetime of abandonment issues and therapy bills. I flinched at the accuracy of her assessment. Both my girls had struggled in different ways with what they believed was their father's rejection. Olivia had become driven, perfectionist, as if trying to prove her worth to the man who had left her. Sophie had gone the opposite direction, insecure, seeking validation in relationships, afraid of abandonment. And what about you, Mom? Sophie asked suddenly, her voice softer now. What did this cost you? 23 years of letting your children believe you drove their father away? 23 years of carrying this alone? I hadn't expected the question. Hadn't expected her to see beyond her own pain to mine. It cost me everything, I said simply. My reputation, my relationship with Robert's family, most of my friends who believed the stories Dave spread, my relationship with you and Olivia. the closeness we should have had, the trust. But you did it anyway, Sophie said, a note of wonder creeping into her voice. You kept his secret. You became the villain in your own story. I loved him, I said, and I loved you and Olivia enough to bear it. Sophie stared at me for a long moment, her expression unreadable. Then, without warning, she slapped me across the face. The blow wasn't particularly hard, but it shocked me into silence, my hand rising automatically to my stinging cheek. That's for lying to me my entire life, she said, her voice trembling. Then, just as suddenly, she threw her arms around me, holding me so tightly I could hardly breathe. And that's for loving Dad enough to keep his secret, for trying to protect us, however misguided it was. I stood frozen in her embrace, too stunned to respond immediately. Then, slowly, I wrapped my arms around my youngest daughter, feeling her body shake with sobs against mine. We stayed that way for what felt like hours, but was probably only minutes. Grief and anger and love tangled together in a way that defied separation. When Sophie finally pulled away, her face was blotchy and tear-stained. I don't forgive you, she said clearly. Not yet. Maybe not ever completely. But I think I understand a little better. I never expected forgiveness, I told her honestly. I just hoped that someday you might understand. Does Olivia know everything? About how Dad actually died? I shook my head. She only read the letter. She left before I could explain the rest. The rest? Sophie asked, wariness returning to her voice. I took a deep breath. This was the part I'd been dreading. The final piece of the story that I'd kept hidden for so long. Your father didn't just die of brain cancer, I said quietly. He took his own life before the disease could take him completely. His final act of control over an uncontrollable situation. Sophie's face went white with shock. He killed himself? And you kept that from us too? It was a planned, compassionate choice, I explained quickly, when he still had enough of himself left to make the decision, before he lost the ability to act on it. He didn't want to linger, suffering, unrecognizable to himself or to us. He wanted to go on his own terms. And Dave? The family? Do they know this part? I nodded slowly. Dave was there that day. He helped me. It was the last time he was ever kind to me. Afterward, his guilt turned to anger. He needed someone to blame. I was the convenient target. Sophie sank into a chair, her legs seemingly unable to support her any longer. This is too much, she whispered. Too much to process all at once. I know, I said gently. I'm so sorry, Sophie, for all of it. I need to talk to Olivia, she said, reaching for her phone. She needs to know the whole truth, too. As Sophie dialed her sister's number, I stood quietly in my kitchen, surrounded by the ghosts of 23 years of secrets. The truth was finally free, for better or worse. The carefully constructed narrative that had shaped all our lives had crumbled into dust. What would rise from those ashes remained to be seen. The day after Sophie's visit, I woke before dawn, my body heavy with exhaustion despite having barely slept. The events of the previous day played on repeat in my mind. Olivia's anger, Sophie's shock, the secret I'd carried for so long suddenly exposed to the harsh light of day. For 23 years, I had lived for my promise to Robert, had shaped my entire existence around protecting my daughters from what we believed was a greater pain, had sacrificed my reputation, my relationships, my own peace of mind for what Robert had convinced me was the right thing to do. But lying in bed that morning, watching the first gray light of dawn filter through my curtains, I felt something shift inside me. A realization that had been building for years, perhaps, but that I hadn't allowed myself to fully acknowledge. Robert had been wrong. I had been wrong. The thought came with startling clarity, not as a betrayal of my promise or my love for him, but as a simple, undeniable truth. In trying to protect our daughters from the pain of losing their father, we had inflicted a different, perhaps more insidious wound. We had robbed them of their truth, their history, their chance to grieve properly. I sat up slowly, my joints protesting as they did more and more these days. The house was quiet around me, the silence of a home that had held secrets for too long. I padded to the bathroom, catching sight of my reflection in the mirror. The face that looked back at me seemed different somehow. Older, yes. I'd earned every one of those lines around my eyes and mouth. But there was something else there too. A weight lifted, perhaps. The beginning of freedom. I showered and dressed mechanically, my mind racing with new thoughts, new possibilities. For the first time in 23 years, I wasn't bound by my promise to Robert. The truth was out. The carefully constructed facade had crumbled. And while the aftermath was painful and messy, there was also a strange sense of liberation. In the kitchen, I made coffee and sat at the table where so much had been revealed the day before. My hand moved almost of its own accord to the drawer where I kept important papers. From it, I withdrew a small address book, old-fashioned, the kind people rarely used anymore. I flipped to the M section and stared at the entry I'd never deleted but had never used. Margaret and Harold Mitchell, Robert's parents, my daughter's grandparents. They were in their 80s now. Last I'd heard, they still lived in the same house in Hartford where Robert had grown up. They had missed their granddaughter's entire lives, believing the lies Dave had told them about me, believing that I had driven their son away. Before I could reconsider, I reached for my phone and dialed the number. It rang 4 times, and I was about to hang up when a wavering female voice answered. "Hello?" "Margaret, my mother-in-law, a woman who had once embraced me as a daughter only to cut me out of her life entirely." "Margaret," I said, my voice steadier than I expected. "It's Eleanor Mitchell." There was a long silence on the other end of the line. Then, "Why are you calling? After all these years?" No warmth, no surprise, just wariness and the lingering echo of old anger. "The girls know the truth," I said simply. "About Robert, about the cancer, about everything." Another silence, longer this time. I could hear her breathing, could almost picture her in the kitchen of the Colonial where Robert had grown up, the phone pressed to her ear, her face a mask of confusion. "What truth?" she finally asked, her voice fragile with age and uncertainty. "What are you talking about?" The realization hit me like a physical blow. "You don't know, do you?" I whispered. "Dave never told you. Not the real truth. Eleanor, if this is some kind of game..." "Robert didn't leave me, Margaret," I interrupted, the words tumbling out now that the dam had broken. "He didn't leave any of us. He had brain cancer, glioblastoma. He died 23 years ago. Dave was there. Dave knew." The sharp intake of breath on the other end of the line was followed by a clatter. The phone dropped, perhaps. I waited, my heart pounding in my chest. After what felt like an eternity, Margaret's voice returned, shaky and distant, as if she'd put me on speakerphone. "Harold," she called, her voice breaking. "Harold, you need to hear this." I heard shuffling, murmured words I couldn't make out. Then Harold's voice, once booming and authoritative, now thinned with age. "What's going on? Why is she calling?" "Just listen," Margaret said. And so I told them everything. About the diagnosis, about Robert's decision to keep it secret, about his insistence that the girls be told he had left rather than died, about his final months, about Dave's initial support and subsequent betrayal, about the 23 years I'd spent honoring a promise that had cost all of us so dearly. When I finished, there was silence on the other end of the line. Then the unmistakable sound of weeping, Margaret's soft sobs, and Harold's rougher breathing. "Why?" Harold finally asked, his voice thick with emotion. "Why would Dave lie to us?" "I think he was angry," I said gently. "Angry at Robert for dying. Angry at me for agreeing to Robert's plan. Angry at the world for taking his brother. Grief does strange things to people. All these years," Margaret whispered. "All these years we thought. We believed." "I know," I said. "I'm sorry. I wanted to tell you so many times, but I promised Robert. And then, after a while, it seemed too late. The damage was done. Our granddaughters," Harold said. "We missed everything. Their childhoods, their graduations, their lives." The pain in his voice mirrored my own. "It's not too late," I said, surprising myself with the words. "They're adults now, yes, but they're remarkable women. Women you would be proud to know. Women who just discovered that the grandfather they thought wanted nothing to do with them has been a victim in this too." "You would allow that?" Margaret asked, disbelief evident in her tone. "After everything we've said about you, the way we've treated you, we've all been victims of Robert's decision," I said, "and of Dave's lies. I think it's time to heal the wounds, don't you? For the girls' sake, if nothing else." There was a murmured conversation I couldn't quite make out. Then Margaret came back on the line. "We would like that very much," she said formally, but I could hear the emotion beneath the words. "When? How? Let me talk to the girls first," I said. They're still processing everything. It's been a shock for them too. After I hung up, I sat motionless at my kitchen table, stunned by what I had just done. 23 years of silence, broken in a single phone call. 23 years of division, potentially healing, all because I had finally allowed myself to question the promise I'd made to a dying man who thought he knew what was best for everyone. I reached for my phone again, this time to text both my daughters. The message was simple. There's more to the story, more healing to be done. When you're ready to hear it, I'm ready to tell it. All of it. No more secrets. Then I did something I hadn't done in over 2 decades. I walked to the attic stairs, climbed them slowly, and approached the stack of storage bins in the corner. The ones labeled simply R, Robert's things. His clothes I couldn't bear to donate. His books. His records. The photo albums I'd carefully preserved but hidden away. The home videos I'd transferred to digital but never watched. The physical remnants of a life cut short and then erased. It was time to bring him back. Not the fiction of the man who had abandoned his family, but the real Robert. The man who had loved us so completely that he'd made a terrible, misguided choice out of that love. The man my daughters had a right to know, to remember, to mourn properly at last. As I carried the first box downstairs, I felt lighter than I had in years. The secret that had defined my life for so long was no longer mine to bear alone. The truth, painful as it was, had set something free inside me, had awakened me to the possibility that the next chapter of my life, our lives, might be different, might be better, might be honest in a way we hadn't been for 23 long years. 3 days passed before I heard from either of my daughters. 3 days of waiting, wondering, fearing that the truth had damaged our already fragile relationships beyond repair. 3 days of bringing Robert's belongings down from the attic, of opening boxes that had remained sealed for over 2 decades, of reacquainting myself with the tangible reminders of the man I had loved and lost. I found myself talking to him as I sorted through his possessions, laying them out carefully in what had once been his office, but had long ago become a guest bedroom that rarely saw guests. "You were wrong, you know," I told his favorite sweater, as I carefully shook out the folds, surprised that it still held a faint trace of his scent after all these years. So wrong about what would hurt them less. So were we both. It was strange, this new freedom to question the decision that had shaped all our lives. To acknowledge that the man I had placed on a pedestal of sacrifice and love had been fallible, human, that his last wish, born of love though it was, had been a mistake. On the 4th day, my phone rang. Olivia's name flashed on the screen. "Mom?" Her voice sounded different, subdued, uncertain, so unlike my confident, assertive eldest daughter. "Sophie told me. About Dad. About how he died. I wanted to tell you myself," I said. "But you left so quickly. I needed time," she said. "I still do, but Sophie also said you texted about there being more to the story? More healing?" I took a deep breath. "Yes, I've spoken to your grandparents. Your father's parents." Silence on the other end of the line. Then, the grandparents who wanted nothing to do with us, who never sent birthday cards or Christmas presents. Those grandparents? The grandparents who were lied to by Dave, I corrected gently. Just as you were. They never knew about your father's cancer, never knew he died. They believed all these years that I had driven him away, that I had prevented him from seeing them, seeing you. No. The disbelief in Olivia's voice was palpable. That's not possible. They never reached out, never tried to contact us. They thought I had legal orders preventing it, I explained. Another of Dave's lies. They believed they were respecting Robert's wishes by staying away. And you're just telling them now? After 23 years? The accusation in her tone stung, but I deserved it. "Yes," I said simply, "because I finally realized that the promise I made to your father, the secret I kept, has hurt too many people for too long, including you and Sophie. Including your grandparents. Including me." Olivia was quiet for so long I thought she might have hung up. Finally, she said, "I need to see them, to hear their side of the story. They want to meet you," I said. "Both of you, when you're ready." "I'll talk to Sophie," she replied. "We'll figure something out." After we hung up, I returned to my task of bringing Robert back into our home, into our lives. I hung some of his photographs on the walls. Robert holding newborn Olivia, Robert teaching Sophie to ride a bike, Robert and me on our wedding day, young and radiant and blissfully unaware of what lay ahead. In one of the boxes from the attic, I found a small leather journal I didn't recognize. Robert's name was embossed on the cover. With trembling fingers, I opened it to the first page and saw his handwriting, clear and strong, from before the tumor began affecting his motor skills. For Eleanor, the first page read, "To be read when I'm gone, when you doubt yourself, when you need to remember why I loved you." A journal. For me. Something I hadn't known existed. I carried it to the living room couch, curled up with a blanket, and began to read. It wasn't a daily diary, but rather sporadic entries, reflections, love notes, memories Robert had wanted to preserve. The first entry was dated just after our wedding. "Married Eleanor Jean Williams today. Still can't believe she said yes. Still can't believe I get to spend my life with the most compassionate, intelligent, beautiful woman I've ever known." I traced my fingers over the words, tears blurring my vision. I read entry after entry. Robert's joy when Olivia was born. She has Eleanor's determination. Screamed for 3 hours straight. His wonder when Sophie came along. How can the heart expand so much without bursting? His pride in my career. Eleanor saved a life today. Actually saved a life. And she came home and made dinner like it was nothing. She has no idea how extraordinary she is. And then, the entries from after his diagnosis. Darker, more introspective, but still suffused with love. Eleanor fought me again today about telling the girls. She's right, of course. She usually is. But I can't bear the thought of Olivia and Sophie watching me disappear piece by piece. Can't bear the thought of becoming a burden, a ghost of their father while still breathing. Is it selfish to want them to remember me whole? Is it cruel to ask Eleanor to bear this burden alone? I don't know anymore. The tumor takes more of me each day. Decision-making becomes harder. But on this, I remain resolved. I read until I reached the final entry, dated just days before he took his final, carefully planned exit from this world. "My dearest Eleanor, if you're reading this, I'm gone. And you're carrying the weight of my decision, our decision, alone. I know it won't be easy. I know there will be days you question everything, days you hate me for what I've asked of you. But please know this. Of all the blessings in my too short life, loving you was the greatest. You gave me a family, a home, a place of perfect belonging. You fought for me until the end, even when I made choices you disagreed with. You loved me at my worst, my weakest, my most broken. No man could ask for more. No man deserves more. The road ahead will be hard. The girls will ask questions you can't answer truthfully. My family may turn against you. You may find yourself very alone. On those days, remember this. I knew exactly what I was asking. I knew the cost to you, and I asked anyway, because I believe with everything in me that this is best for our daughters. Someday, when they're old enough to understand, you'll share my letter with them, and perhaps then, they'll see that every choice we made, even the painful ones, came from a place of love. I don't have much left to give you, my love. The disease has taken almost everything. But I can give you this journal, these words, this testament to a life well lived because of you, to a love that even death cannot diminish. All my love, for all my life, and beyond. Robert. I closed the journal, holding it against my heart, fresh tears streaming down my face. All these years, I'd had this gift waiting for me. Robert's voice, his thoughts, his unwavering love, and I hadn't known, just as our daughters hadn't known the truth about their father. Just as Robert's parents hadn't known what happened to their son. So many secrets, so many wounds, so much lost time. My phone buzzed with a text from Sophie. "Olivia and I talked. We want to meet our grandparents. This Sunday. Are you free to come with us?" I stared at the message, a complex mix of emotions washing over me. Fear, hope, grief, possibility. This was uncharted territory for all of us. A reunion decades in the making, built on the ruins of secrets and lies. But it was also a beginning, a chance to reclaim something we had all lost. "Yes," I texted back. "I'll be there." I placed Robert's journal on the coffee table and looked around at the photographs I'd brought down from the attic, at the visible return of the man who had been invisible for so long. There would be more revelations in the coming days, more pain, more healing, more truth. But for the first time in 23 years, I felt a strange sense of peace. The burden I had carried alone for so long was now shared. The secret that had defined my life was finally free. And in that freedom, despite all the pain it had caused, there was power. The power of truth. The power of authentic grief. The power of new beginnings, even after decades of endings. Sunday loomed both too distant and too close. I spent the intervening days in a flurry of activity. Practical preparations for our meeting with Margaret and Harold, but also emotional preparations for what promised to be a difficult, complex reunion. I called Margaret again to confirm the arrangements. We would meet at their home in Hartford. Neutral territory seemed wise, but a restaurant would be too public for the emotions that might surface. Harold had difficulty walking these days, Margaret explained, her voice tentative as if she still couldn't quite believe we were having a civil conversation after so many years of silence and animosity. Should we bring anything? I asked, the ordinary courtesy feeling strangely inadequate for the extraordinary circumstances. Just our granddaughters, Margaret replied, her voice catching on the word. Just them. After hanging up, I returned to the task I'd been steadily working on, creating memory boxes for each of my daughters. In Robert's office, I had laid out the photographs, letters, mementos that told the story of their father. The real story, not the fiction we had constructed to shield them from pain. For Olivia's box, I included her father's favorite book of poetry, dog-eared, and annotated in his precise handwriting, the tiny hospital bracelet from when she was born, which Robert had kept in his wallet until the day he died, the Father's Day card she'd made him just months before his diagnosis, covered in glitter and declaring him the best daddy ever, the mixtape he'd created for her, yes, an actual cassette tape, a relic of its time, with songs he thought she'd appreciate when she was older. For Sophie, I gathered different treasures. The stuffed elephant Robert had bought when we found out we were having a second daughter. The bedtime story he'd written himself, illustrated with his charmingly terrible drawings, about a little girl who could talk to clouds. The silver bracelet he'd bought for her, someday 16th birthday, which I'd kept hidden away instead of giving to her, trapped by the promise I'd made. Each item I placed in the boxes felt like both a reclamation and a confession. Here was the father they should have known. Here were the pieces of him I had kept from them. Here was the truth, tangible and undeniable. On Saturday evening, my phone rang. Dave's name flashed on the screen. I stared at it for a long moment, my heart suddenly racing. Dave hadn't called me in years, not since Sophie's high school graduation, when he'd shown up uninvited and caused a scene that had left my youngest daughter in tears and me shaking with rage. I almost didn't answer, but the new resolve I'd found, the commitment to truth, to healing, to facing the past, wouldn't allow me to ignore him. I took a deep breath and picked up. Eleanor. His voice was rougher than I remembered, aged by years, and from the slight slurring of the word, alcohol. I hear you've been busy. Hello, Dave, I said, keeping my voice neutral. Yes, I suppose I have. Mom called me, he continued, quite upset. Something about Robert having cancer? About him dying 23 years ago? About me knowing and lying to everyone? He gave a harsh laugh. Creative story, Ellie. Really creative. The use of my nickname, something only friends and Robert had ever called me, sent a surge of anger through me, but I tamped it down, determined not to let him provoke me. It's not a story, Dave, I said calmly. It's the truth you've known all along, the truth you helped hide and then distorted to turn everyone against me. And why would I do that? He demanded. Why would I lie about my own brother? Because you were angry, I said softly. Because grief makes people do terrible things. Because it was easier to blame me than to accept that Robert made choices you disagreed with. There was a long silence on the other end of the line. Then, you have no proof. The words hung in the air between us, a challenge and a threat all at once. And suddenly, I realized what this call was really about. Dave was scared. For 23 years, he'd controlled the narrative. He'd been the keeper of Robert's memory, the authority on what had happened, the loyal brother betrayed by a scheming wife. Now that version of events was crumbling, and with it, his position in the family. I have Robert's letter to the girls, I said. I have his medical records. I have the hospice documentation. I have the journal he kept during his illness. And I have the truth, Dave. After all these years, I finally have the truth. Another silence. Longer this time. I could hear him breathing. Could almost picture him pacing in whatever darkened room he was calling from, drink in hand. mind racing. "You'll destroy them," he said finally, his voice smaller now. "Mom and Dad, they're old, Eleanor. This will break them." "No," I disagreed gently. "What will break them is discovering that they've lost 23 years with their granddaughters because of a lie. What will break them is realizing that their son died alone, except for you and me, because you decided they couldn't handle the truth. They deserve better, Dave. We all do. They won't forgive you," he said, a desperate edge to his voice now, "for keeping this from them, for letting them believe." "Perhaps not," I acknowledged. "That's a risk I have to take. But I'm done living with secrets. I'm done letting Robert's final mistake define all our lives." "His mistake?" Dave's voice rose sharply. "You promised him, Eleanor. You swore you'd keep his secret. Now you're betraying him." "I'm setting us all free," I interrupted. "Including you, Dave. Don't you see? This secret has poisoned everything it touched. It's time for the truth, however painful it might be." When he spoke again, his voice had changed. Harder, colder. "I'll deny everything. Tell them you're lying, that you've lost your mind, that this is some twisted attempt to rewrite history. You can try," I said, surprised by how calm I felt in the face of his threat. "But the evidence is overwhelming, Dave. And deep down, I think they'll know I'm telling the truth. I think part of them has always suspected something wasn't right about your story." "You'll regret this," he said, the threat explicit now. "I'll make sure of it." "I've spent 23 years regretting the promise I made to Robert," I replied. "I won't spend another day regretting telling the truth. Goodbye, Dave." I hung up before he could respond, my hands surprisingly steady. I had expected to feel frightened after confronting the man who had caused so much damage, who had turned family against family with his lies. Instead, I felt strangely empowered. Dave's threats held no power over me anymore. The truth was finally free, and with it, I was free too. The phone rang again almost immediately. Dave, calling back to continue the fight. I let it go to voicemail. Whatever venom he needed to spew could wait. I had more important things to focus on. My daughters, their grandparents, the healing that might finally begin tomorrow. As I returned to my task of preparing the memory boxes, I realized that something fundamental had shifted inside me. For 23 years, I had defined myself by my promise to Robert, by the secret I kept, by the villain I had allowed myself to become in everyone else's story. I had surrendered my own narrative, my own truth, my own power to the dying wish of a man I loved. No more. The woman who would face Margaret and Harold tomorrow, who would stand beside her daughters as they met their grandparents for the first real time, who would counter Dave's inevitable attempts to preserve his lies, that woman was finally, truly me. Eleanor Mitchell. Not just Robert's widow, or Olivia and Sophie's mother, or the keeper of a tragic secret. Me, with my own strength, my own truth, my own power to shape what came next. I closed Olivia and Sophie's memory boxes, tying them with simple ribbon. Tomorrow would bring its own challenges, its own pain, its own possibilities. But for the first time in 23 years, I would face it as myself, whole, unburdened, free. Sunday dawned clear and cool, a perfect New England autumn day. I dressed carefully in a simple navy dress, neither too formal nor too casual for the momentous meeting ahead. In the kitchen, I packed the memory boxes for Olivia and Sophie, along with a small photo album I'd assembled overnight, a visual timeline of Robert's life, including photographs his parents had never seen, our wedding, the girls' births, our family vacations, the last Christmas before the diagnosis, the final precious months of his life. The doorbell rang precisely at 10. My daughters stood on the porch, both looking as if they'd slept as poorly as I had. Olivia in her typical polished style, hair perfectly smooth, makeup flawless, designer coat buttoned against the chill. Sophie more casual but no less intentional in her appearance, her curls tamed somewhat, a hint of color on her usually makeup-free face. "Are you ready for this?" I asked as they entered, the question encompassing far more than the drive to Hartford. "No," Sophie answered honestly, "but I don't think I ever will be, so we might as well go now." Olivia merely nodded, her expression guarded. She had been the one most wounded by what she perceived as her father's abandonment, the one who had struggled most visibly with feelings of rejection and unworthiness. Learning the truth had shaken her foundation in ways I was only beginning to understand. I have something for each of you, I said, gesturing to the memory boxes on the kitchen table. You can open them now or later, or never, but they're yours. They're him, the real him. My daughters approached the table cautiously, as if the boxes might contain something dangerous. In a way, I suppose they did. The reality of the father they had never been allowed to know or mourn properly. What's in them? Olivia asked, her hand hovering above hers. Memories, I said simply. Pieces of your father that I've kept all these years. Things he wanted you to have, eventually, when you were ready. Sophie picked up her box, cradling it against her chest. I'll open mine later, when I'm alone. Olivia nodded in agreement, taking hers with more hesitation. We should go. We don't want to be late. The drive to Hartford passed in tense silence. I could feel the anxiety radiating from both my daughters. Fear of the unknown, of disappointment, of more revelations that might further destabilize their sense of self and family. What are they like? Sophie finally asked, as we turned onto the street where Robert had grown up. Our grandparents? I considered the question carefully. They were different people when I knew them. Before all this, your grandmother Margaret was warm, creative. She taught art at the community college, always had paint under her fingernails. Your grandfather Harold was more reserved, an engineer, precise, but he would light up around children. He adored you both the short time he knew you. And they really had no idea about Dad? Olivia asked, the skepticism clear in her voice. All these years? Dave convinced them that I had legal orders preventing them from contacting you. I explained again, that I had threatened to move you away if they tried. They believed him because it was easier than questioning why their son would cut them off completely. Just as you believed he abandoned us because it was the explanation you were given. The Mitchell family home appeared ahead. A stately Victorian painted a soft gray with white trim. I parked across the street, my hands suddenly trembling on the steering wheel. Whatever happens in there, I said, turning to face my daughters, please know that I never wanted to hurt you, that every choice I made, even the wrong ones, came from love. Sophie reached forward from the back seat to squeeze my shoulder. We know, Mom. We're still processing, still angry, still confused. But we know you thought you were doing the right thing. Olivia said nothing, but she nodded slightly, the most acknowledgement she'd offered since discovering the truth. We approached the house together, my heart pounding so hard I was sure my daughters could hear it. Before we could even reach the porch, the front door opened. Margaret and Harold stood framed in the doorway, looking smaller and more fragile than I remembered, diminished by age and grief and lost years. For a moment, no one moved. No one spoke. We all simply stared at each other across a chasm of 23 years of absence and misunderstanding. Then Margaret stepped forward, her hands reaching out, her face crumpling with emotion. Olivia, she whispered, looking at my eldest daughter. Sophie, is it really you? The girls glanced at me uncertainly. I nodded encouragement, stepping back slightly to give them space. Sophie moved first, always the more emotionally accessible of my daughters. Grandma? She said tentatively, testing the word on her tongue. That single word broke the dam. Margaret rushed forward with surprising speed for a woman her age, embracing Sophie with such force that my youngest daughter gasped slightly. Harold followed more slowly, leaning heavily on a cane, tears streaming unashamedly down his weathered face. You look just like him, he said wonderingly as he approached Olivia. Just like our Robert. Olivia stood frozen for a moment, her professional composure cracking visibly. Then, with a small sound that might have been a sob, she allowed her grandfather to embrace her. I hung back, watching the reunion with a complex mixture of emotions. Joy that my daughters were finally connecting with their father's parents. Grief for all the years lost. Anxiety about what might come next. Harold looked up from embracing Olivia and saw me standing apart. His expression changed, not to the anger or resentment I had feared, but to something more complicated. Sadness, regret, understanding. Eleanor, he said, extending his hand to me. Come, please. This is your family too. The simple act of inclusion, so unexpected after decades of exclusion, undid me. I stepped forward into the circle of family, accepting Harold's handshake, then Margaret's tentative embrace. Together, this broken constellation of people connected by love and loss and terrible mistakes, we made our way into the house where Robert had grown up. The living room was frozen in time, The same furniture I remembered from visits decades ago, the same family photographs on the walls. But there was a new addition, a large portrait of Robert, displayed prominently above the fireplace. He looked young, healthy, vibrant, the way he had been before the cancer stole him piece by piece. "We've had so many questions," Margaret said, as we all sat awkwardly in the formal living room. "So many things we didn't understand. Why Robert cut us off. Why he wouldn't let us see the girls. Why he changed so much at the end." "He didn't cut you off," I said gently. "The cancer did. The tumor was affecting his judgment, his emotions, his ability to think clearly. By the time he made the decision to leave on his own terms, he wasn't entirely himself anymore." "But Dave said," Harold began. "Dave lied," I interrupted, more sharply than I'd intended. "He was there at the end. He knew the truth. But after Robert was gone, he created a different story, one that painted me as the villain." "Why would he do that?" Margaret asked, genuine bewilderment in her voice. "Because he was angry," Sophie said unexpectedly. "Because he needed someone to blame. Because the truth was too painful to accept." She looked at me with sudden insight. "Isn't that right, Mom?" I nodded, surprised and touched by her perception. "I think so. Yes. Dave and Robert were always close. When Robert chose to end his life before the cancer could take everything from him, Dave supported him in the moment. But afterward, I think the grief, the guilt, the anger needed somewhere to go. I was the convenient target, and you let us believe his lies," Harold said, not accusingly, but with sad wonder. "All these years. I promised Robert," I said simply. "He made me swear to maintain the fiction that he had left rather than died. He thought it would protect the girls from the trauma of watching him deteriorate. He thought it would give them a normal childhood, free from the shadow of his illness and death." I looked at my daughters. He was wrong. We were wrong. But we thought we were acting out of love. 23 years, Margaret whispered, reaching for her granddaughter's hands. "We've lost 23 years. But we're here now," Olivia said, speaking up for the first time since we'd entered the house. "We can't get those years back. But we're here now. We can go forward." A noise at the doorway made us all turn. Dave stood there, his face flushed with emotion or alcohol or both. He looked older, heavier, angrier than I remembered, the years having taken a toll on him as they had on all of us. "Well," he said, his voice dripping with false joviality, "isn't this a touching family reunion?" "David," Margaret said, her voice suddenly stern in a way I had never heard before. "This isn't the time." "When is the time, Mom?" he demanded, stepping fully into the room. "When is the time to discuss the web of lies Eleanor has been spinning? The way she's manipulating all of you, just like she manipulated Robert?" "That's enough," Harold said, rising slowly to his feet, leaning on his cane. "We've seen the evidence, son. The medical records, the hospice documentation, the letter Robert wrote to the girls. It's over. The truth is out." Dave's face contorted with something between rage and panic. "You can't possibly believe her. After all these years of what she did to this family. What I did." I stood, facing the man who had caused so much damage with his lies. "You were there, Dave. You held Robert's hand while he died. You helped me make the arrangements. You knew the truth, the whole truth, and you chose to twist it into something ugly. To turn his parents against me. To poison my daughter's memories of their father. I was protecting them," Dave shouted, gesturing wildly at his parents. "They couldn't have handled knowing he killed himself, that he chose to die rather than fight, that he killed himself?" Margaret's voice cut through the room like a blade, silencing everyone. "What are you saying, David? That Robert took his own life?" The color drained from Dave's face as he realized his mistake. In his anger, he had revealed the final piece of the truth, the detail I had been waiting to share more gently. "Yes," I said quietly, moving to sit beside Margaret. "The cancer was terminal, inoperable. In the final stages, when he was losing control of his body, his mind, his dignity, he chose to leave on his own terms. With medication the hospice provided, with Dave and me at his side. It was peaceful, dignified, his choice." Margaret covered her face with her hands. Harold sank heavily back onto the couch. My daughters sat motionless, absorbing this final revelation with expressions of shock and pain. Dave stood in the center of the room, suddenly looking lost, deflated. The anger seemed to drain out of him, leaving behind something more vulnerable, More human. I couldn't tell them that, he whispered, not looking at anyone. I couldn't admit that I helped him, that I agreed with his decision, that I held his hand while his voice broke. It was easier to blame you, to make you the villain, to pretend that Robert was still out there somewhere, just gone, not dead, never dead. The admission, the first honest words Dave had spoken in 23 years, hung in the air between us all. No one moved to comfort him. No one spoke to absolve him. The damage he had done was too extensive, too deliberate, for easy forgiveness. You need to leave now, David, Harold said finally, his voice heavy with sadness and disappointment. We need time, all of us. Time to process the truth. Time to begin to heal. Dave looked around the room, perhaps seeking an ally, finding none. His gaze settled on me last. I'm sorry, he said, the words sounding rusty, unfamiliar on his tongue. I don't expect you to forgive me, any of you, but I am sorry. He turned and left without another word, the front door closing quietly behind him. In his wake, the room felt different, cleaner somehow, as if a long festering wound had finally been lanced. Margaret reached for the photo album I had brought, opening it with trembling hands. Show us, she said simply. Show us our son's life, the parts we missed, the father our granddaughters never got to know. And so, gathered in that living room full of ghosts and new beginnings, we began the long, painful, necessary process of reconstructing the truth, of meeting Robert again through stories and photographs, of mourning him properly, together, at last. 6 months have passed since that Sunday in Hartford. 6 months of truths, reconciliations, and new beginnings. 6 months of properly mourning a man who died 23 years ago, but who, in many ways, we're only now allowing to truly rest in peace. The leaves are turning again, painting Connecticut in the fiery oranges and reds that Robert always loved. Nature's last hurrah, he used to call autumn, admiring the defiant beauty of trees preparing for their winter sleep. I think of him often these days, not with the aching hollowness that characterized the past 2 decades, but with a gentler, cleaner grief, the kind that honors what was lost while recognizing that life continues, must continue. Olivia and Sophie visit more frequently now, not just out of obligation or guilt, but with a genuine desire to reconnect, to rebuild. The truth, painful as it was, cleared the air between us in ways I never thought possible. We talk about Robert openly now, share memories, look at photographs, watch old home videos that make us laugh and cry in equal measure. He had such a terrible singing voice, Sophie remarked last week, as we watched footage of Robert serenading a 3-year-old Olivia on her birthday. How did we not remember that? Trauma, Olivia said simply. We locked away the good with the bad. Easier that way. My eldest daughter has changed the most in these months of revelation and healing. The driven perfectionism that defined her for so long has softened somewhat. She started therapy, 23 years late, she told me wryly, but better than never. She's learning to separate her worth from her achievements, learning that her father didn't leave because she wasn't enough, that sometimes terrible things happen not because we deserve them, but simply because life is fragile and unpredictable. Margaret and Harold have become fixtures in our lives again. They drive down from Hartford every other Sunday for dinner. Harold teaches Sophie's 3rd graders about engineering through simple, engaging projects. Margaret volunteers at the hospital where I work, using art therapy to help patients cope with long-term illnesses. We are healing together, this patchwork family stitched back together after decades of separation. Dave remains on the periphery. He's in therapy too, finally confronting the grief and guilt he channeled into anger for so many years. He sends cards on birthdays and holidays, makes tentative overtures toward reconciliation. The road back for him will be longer, the forgiveness harder won, but there is a road back. That's more than I would have believed possible 6 months ago. As for me, I've undergone my own transformation. For 23 years, I defined myself primarily as the keeper of Robert's secret, the guardian of a promise that cost me nearly everything. Now, freed from that burden, I'm rediscovering who Eleanor Mitchell is beyond her roles as widow, mother, secret keeper. I've started painting again, a hobby I abandoned after Robert died. My first completed work hangs in the hallway, a portrait of Robert based on a photograph taken months before his diagnosis. In it, he's laughing, eyes crinkled at the corners, face tilted toward sunlight streaming through trees. It captures him as he was before the cancer. Vibrant, joyful, fully alive. "You've made him immortal," Sophie said when she first saw it. "This is how we should remember him." Last month, on what would have been Robert's 60th birthday, we held a proper memorial service. Not the secret, hurried cremation of 23 years ago, but a true celebration of his life. In the backyard of the home where we raised our family, surrounded by friends and relatives who had been kept in the dark for too long, we finally said goodbye to Robert Mitchell properly. Olivia read from his favorite poetry collection. Sophie played the piano, a skill she inherited from her father. Margaret and Harold shared stories from his childhood, and I, standing in the dappled shade of the oak tree Robert planted the year we bought the house, read excerpts from the journal he left me, the authentic voice of a man who loved deeply, if imperfectly, who made a terrible mistake with the best of intentions, who deserved to be remembered for all that he was, not the fiction we created in his absence. After the memorial, as guests mingled and shared memories, I found myself standing alone by the treehouse Robert had built for the girls. It was weathered now, in need of repair, but still standing, a testament to his craftsmanship, his love, his presence in our lives even after so much time had passed. "Mom?" Sophie appeared beside me, her hand slipping into mine with the easy affection that had returned to our relationship. "Are you okay?" "Yes," I said, realizing with some surprise that it was true. "I think I finally am." "Do you think Dad would be happy with how things turned out?" she asked, looking up at the treehouse. "With us knowing the truth?" I considered the question carefully, wanting to honor both Robert's intentions and the reality of what his decision had cost us all. "I think he would regret the pain his choice caused," I said finally, "but I think he would be grateful that we found our way back to each other, that his parents got to know his daughters, that we're remembering him honestly now." Sophie nodded, seeming satisfied with my answer. "I opened my memory box last night," she said. "The story he wrote for me, about the girl who could talk to clouds. I think I remember him reading it to me. His voice, the way he did different voices for all the characters. I thought that memory was gone forever, but it was just waiting for the right moment to come back." Her words perfectly captured what these months of reconciliation and truth have felt like. The return of memories long buried, the reclamation of a past we had tried to forget, but that shaped us nonetheless. The rebuilding of connections severed by secrets and lies. Later that night, after everyone had gone, I sat alone in Robert's office, no longer a guest room, but a space that acknowledged his continued presence in our lives. His books lined the shelves again. His records filled the cabinet beneath the turntable. His photographs smiled from the desk where I now wrote my own journal entries, a practice I'd adopted after reading his journal to me. I opened to a fresh page and began to write. "Dear Robert, today we remembered you properly. Today we honored the truth of who you were, not the fiction we created after you were gone. Today your daughters, your parents, your friends, and even your brother came together to celebrate the life you lived, rather than mourn the lie we told about how you left it. You were wrong, my love. So wrong about what would protect our daughters from pain. So wrong about the cost of the secret you asked me to keep. But you were also so full of love. Imperfect, human love that did the best it could with an impossible situation. I kept my promise to you for 23 years. I carried the burden of your choice, became the villain in my own life story, sacrificed my reputation and relationships to honor your final wish. And if I could go back, knowing what I know now, I would fight harder against that promise. I would insist on truth, painful as it might have been. But we can't go back. We can only go forward. And going forward means forgiving. You, me, Dave, all of us who made mistakes thinking we were doing the right thing. Going forward means healing the wounds that secrecy inflicted. Going forward means remembering you as you truly were. Not perfect, not a monster, just a man, a husband, a father, a son, a brother, a human being faced with an impossible choice. The secret is finally free, my love. And so, at last, are we all. I closed the journal, feeling a sense of peace that had eluded me for 23 long years. Outside, the autumn wind whispered through leaves soon to fall. Inside, in this house filled with memories both painful and precious, a new season was beginning. A season of truth, a season of healing, a season of remembering Robert Mitchell as he truly was, and loving him at last, without the weight of secrets between us.